What's up, everybody? Well, I have a moment to make a video wherein I don't have to whisper, which is rare. And I just wanted to talk about, that stupid air would have to come on. But unfortunately, that's summer. We can't just make ourselves hot in here so that I can have a better quality video. I'm not going to make myself cold in the winter and hot in the summer so that things like that don't come on. So what I want to talk about in this video, which I've touched on before, I always end up making full videos out of things that I just barely touch on. But I want to talk about the dorm life. I want to title this video, The Dorm Life, and how I'm glad I didn't live it. Well, once upon a time, like my high school days, computers were a little bit more like this, though this was already outdated, by 2000. When I was in high school, and this was a little Limoges box on a cake of mine. And computers were more like old school TVs once upon a time. And I can still remember playing Oregon Trail, and my epitaphs would all be about having never vomited, having never had a cold and things like that. That was a memory that I'll never forget. And so basically, the dorm life. I never lived the dorm life. And it really makes me angry when people treat, just like they think of daycare as the norm for little kids below the age of 5, that it's just as normal as can be. It's just as normal to put a 3-year-old in some sort of a school, like a preschool, as it is a 5-year-old 2 years later. And I think it's absolutely disgusting. It grosses me out, the fact that 2.5-year-olds are now, they want to call it school because they think that sounds a lot better than daycare. And so they'll say, oh, I'm just sending him to school, even though he's a baby, so that it won't sound like don't care or day orphanage, and that it's just as normal to put a 2-year-old in some kind of a school environment as a 5-year-old. And that grosses me out because it's disgusting, because they're wanting them to have age 2, 3, 4, and now 5, if they don't start kindergarten until almost 6. So they're having 4 years of preschool. I mean, how many years do you really need of anything below the first grade, so they'd have, a total of like 5 years of schooling that they could have been home with their mom. And really, first grade is unnecessary too. It's nothing you learned there that your mom couldn't teach you, unless she's a complete idiot. But I think it's disgusting, that people think it's just the norm to put little kids in preschool beginning when they're still in diapers. I mean, there's like a 98% chance of it if they're male, that at age 2 they're in diapers, and at age 2.5 it's still like an 80% chance. Age 3 it's still about a 49% chance, so about half of them still in diapers by 3, if they're male. So I think it's disgusting, to have a 2.5-year-old boy in some kind of an environment like that when he's not even potty trained, let alone able to blow his nose and wash his hands. Disgusts me. And they think it's also normal, for kids to go away to college at 18 and go live in a dormitory, which is also disgusting. When they don't really know how to do laundry and, clean up the place. No, I think the world would be a better place if more people homeschooled and taught their daughters the more important things in life. Because let's face it, the most important class I ever took was home ec in the spring of '97. That unforgettable semester and year. Most important things I've ever learned for my adult life were learning home ec. And it's amazing how the teachers I remember the most are the ones that taught me the least important class, such as Texas history, when I don't even live in Texas anymore. I'll never forget that guy. But yet, the most important class I was simultaneously taking, that actually helps me in my daily life, was taught by a woman I just rarely think about, just because she happened to teach me at the same time. If she didn't teach me at the same time, I probably wouldn't think about her at all. So, I think it's disgusting, also that kids are expected to go off to a dormitory. And so a lot of people, unlike me, the majority of my colds were in my K through 12 years, when I was forced to be around other kids. you know, what, 7, 8 hours a day, and half of them were boys. And, you know, even in the summer, they would spread germs because they would go out and do things in the summer, whereas we were home with our mom like 99% of the time. And the other 1%, we were outside in the backyard, and she knew what we were doing at all times. Our own backyard, fenced in. And so, you know, there's this misconception that kids just go away to college, you know, and they have all this freedom. My dad said we should have sent me to a 4-year school. Well, I don't think so. I think the junior college was bad enough as far as me going out shopping and also shoplifting, which is probably the most shameful thing I've ever done in my life, was take 5-finger discounts almost every day for a while. And getting saved, that's another thing. It makes me think I got saved in 2008 because the shoplifting miraculously stopped happening. It's like I'd already done it less and less and less every year, but it's like I never did it again from 2008 onward when I got saved, you know, because thou shalt not steal is one of the 10 commandments. And so, you know, yeah, it's like I already had too much freedom as it was at 19, you know, from being redshirted and going to a junior college, which was basically half day, like no more than 2 classes on any given day, 2 or 3 classes, no more. And then another day of the week, I might have another 2. So no more than 5 classes a semester. But, you know, the dorm life, I never lived the dorm life. I never went out drinking, never had sex. So I'm still virginal to this day. And so my colds were concentrated in K through 12. You know, I didn't have a lot when I was little, and then a moderate amount in K through 12, like these daycare kids, then go off to college and start getting them again. Well, I didn't have that kind of a pattern. You know, I just had like a moderate or low number when I was a little kid because I didn't go to daycare. And I had a lot in K through 12, you know, for myself and my little sister. And then in college, I was still getting them from my little sister. You know, I wasn't like hanging out with friends that were giving me these colds. No, they were still coming from mostly my little sister, you know, because she still was in 5th grade and then middle school and then a freshman in high school. And occasionally my dad, but it was normally my little sister. And the last really bad year where I had multiple colds was age 23, and that was her freshman year of high school. You know, that was the last year when I could, by any stretch of the imagination, say I was being slammed by colds. You know, having 3 mild ones. And then after that, it was just 1 or 0 from 24 onward. Because I was never like, it was never really in a situation where I was suddenly around all these new germs. And as much as my mom would like to deny it, you know, I've had over 100 colds in my first quarter century of life. So when you've had over 100 out of 150 or 200, you don't get as many. You don't get as many because you built up immunity. So you have a good fighting chance. When someone at the grocery store is sick, there's a good chance you've already had it. So I never lived the dorm life. I'm glad I didn't live the dorm life and go away to a college and have the name of a college as my identity as a person. You know, these people that are like an Aggie before they're anything else. They're you know, whatever their favorite college is, they're just obsessed with it. They spend the rest of their adult lives obsessed with college, the college that they went to because they went to a 4-year school and they lived there. And, you know, it was like their second home during those years. Well, I never had that experience, and I'm glad I didn't. So go ahead and post this video.